Also, guten Morgen, wie geht's? Ich heiße Liam und ich bin 21 Jahre alt. Seit 2005 wohne ich in England, aber ich bin aus Australien und ich bin hier in Köln für 3 Monate mit einem Praktikum, aber in England ich bin ein Student. So I'm not sure how much of that you were able to understand in my somewhat limited German, so I shall repeat myself in English. My name is Liam, I'm 21 years old and I study in England, studying creative writing with English literature. And so I'm working here in Cologne for 3 months and I've been working with a startup company, and this speech is kind of like a reflection of my time here in the 3 months that have passed and the 2 weeks I have remaining. Also just a slight proviso, even in England when I talk, people find it difficult to understand what I say. So I have a strange accent and I tend to talk very fast. So I'll try and speak slowly and make sure you can understand what the hell I'm saying. So the topic today is on community, which is quite a nice sounding word, isn't it? Community. It seems to imply or bring forth associations of people working together or ideas being shared collectively or people gathering like this in one collectivized area to enjoy one unified experience. And according to the Oxford English Dictionary, community is defined as a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. And I think having that one shared characteristic is applicable to Creative Mornings itself, because as I understand it, the philosophy behind Creative Mornings is where people can come and, as I said, share ideas in one mutual location, but also to find something that is somewhat different or unusual in the business or networking world. Of course, I'm sure many of you here have been to networking events and they can at times be somewhat uninspiring, and I think the only reliable factor of most networking events is mediocre coffee and quite bland conversation. So at least with the Creative Mornings system here, you are quite likely to find opportunities to share ideas or to open up new conversations that you perhaps may not have found elsewhere. And the idea with each month having a particular theme and topic is great because it has that consistent diversity and variety within the mornings that you attend. And so on the notion of creativity and of sharing ideas, I feel as though that Creative Mornings is something like unifying small islands. Because the saying goes that no man is an island, and an idea is not an island either. Because if you think of an idea as a small campfire, you have that first initial spark of creativity, that first bright, shining light of an idea. If that spark isn't fed with fuel, if it's not nourished, then that spark will just fizzle out into smoke. The same with a campfire. If you have that first spark on your small pile of kindling, that won't last very long, it'll just fizzle out. So an idea is like a campfire in the sense that it must be nourished collectively and it must be given fuel. The same with an idea in a venue such as this. If you have something in your heart that you believe to be a truly great idea or something that you really passionately wish to develop, you will share it with other people. You cannot retain an idea independently because it will not have the necessary fuel or necessary nourishment in order to prosper and to develop beyond your own personal restraints. So I feel as though all of us here within this small community of the Creative Mornings world are trying to find other explorers and other settlers on their own small islands to work together collectively within that community to ensure that their ideas, their small campfires, are given fuel and are able to grow and to share. And having been here now for the past 2.5 months and having attended lots of different networking events, it is this idea, this sharing of ideas, that is one of the primary motivations for attending these events. But I have to say that it is within Creative Mornings, that I find there's the greatest opportunity to develop and nourish ideas, because it's not like another business or networking event, because the agenda here is fixed so firmly on nourishing creativity. It's not just collecting business cards or just trying to build contacts and build your business network. It's here where you can build campfires and grow and develop from there. And so many of you sitting here may be wondering what a 21-year-old Australian is doing in Cologne. And so there is quite an extended family history I have behind that factor. So first of all, the internship I am doing here is completely divorced from my studies. It's not mandatory for me at all to undertake an internship, so I'm here purely because I wanted to be. And there's a reason why I wanted to be in Germany specifically, and that is because of my family heritage. So my mother's great-grandparents, the Heitmanns, were originally settled in northern Germany in a town called Natum. I'm not especially sure of where that is, I just know it's somewhere up north. So at some point in the 19th century, my mother's great-grandparents caught wind of the phenomenon known as gold fever, and so set sail for San Francisco on the west coast of America in order to find, west coast, east coast? America, in order to try and find their fortunes in the Californian gold mines. And so after an undisclosed period of time, we don't know, they then sailed from San Francisco to Victoria on the east coast of Australia, and again tried to find more gold there. And then at some point as well, my family relocated from Eastern Australia to Southwest Australia, where my family had originated. So we've no idea exactly how on earth they managed to sail from these different hemispheres all over the planet. All we do know is that our family legacy is built upon the notion of chasing gold and of moving across the planet in search of that dream of gold and of following that treasure. And so, of course, it was 21 years ago that I was born in Western Australia, and it was in 2005 that my mother married my English stepfather, who then relocated my older brother, my mother, and himself to southwest England. So I have this rather mixed heritage of people moving around the world. And now, after maybe 150 years, we're not really sure, a Heitmann is now back in Germany. So that's the reason why I wanted to so badly to have an internship here in Germany. I could have had an internship in England, but I don't really have much of a desire to do that because England is familiar and I have a reasonably good idea of how to get around England. It's here in Germany where the language barrier is a challenge. Mein Deutsch ist ziemlich begrenzt. So it's difficult for me to learn how to communicate and to navigate. Being in a large urban space is confusing and unsettling, es ist verwirrend. So it's a good challenge for me and to learn how to remind myself that I am capable of solving problems as they occur. And it's also being removed from my familiar surroundings, from my community that I had established in England with my network of friends and family, that being here in Germany has been it's been an invigorating reminder, as I say, a reminder of what I'm capable of doing. And so my particular interest in Germany has been fed mostly by the books I read or the films I watch, and also because I like the way German sounds. I wanted to be in the country where I'd be surrounded by it every day and I could be saturated in the language so I'd have a much better chance of learning it. But the main reason for my wanting to be in Germany is the chance to reconnect with my German heritage, because we don't really know in our family where the Heitmanns originated or what their driving notion was. And so it's now that I've been in this new place, been in this new unfamiliar environment, that the question of community is once again brought into sharp focus, because it's been difficult finding a community here. Being in any new large urban space brings with it the difficulties of being unsettled, uncertain, and at some points unsupported, because of course you have your friends who you can communicate with over the phone or over video calls, but fundamentally you are here on your own. And it's a very, at times, very tiring process trying to establish yourself here, trying to find some stable emotional foundation. Because, of course, all the events I attend for work or the social events I attend, seeking this community or seeking this familiarity with people is can be very taxing, because it feels rather like Groundhog Day. Hi, I'm Liam, I study in England, I'm from Australia, do this, haha, ich mag Deutsch, haha. So it can become quite tiring, and that's why I've had this renewed appreciation of what community means. Having been invited to do this talk, it's allowed me the opportunity to think about what a community means and to think about the difficulties of relocation. And because this dream of mine that I had of living in Germany was one that was instigated last September when I went interrailing around Europe. I started in Frankfurt, then Berlin, and went further into Eastern Europe. And I had a great time in Frankfurt and Berlin, mostly because the time I had there was very brief, and so I was seeing these two cities through the very thick beer goggles of a traveller passing through on a train. And it wasn't really representative of what life in a new place can be. It was very fun and exciting and energetic, but it was not the realistic presentation of what life is when you stay somewhere long term, like I have now. And it's a good initiation of what life can be in the real world, because removed from the university bubble where you have your support and you have your familiars, being here in a new unfamiliar territory is quite daunting. And particularly life in a city. It's not just Cologne, but I think generally life in a large urban space is quite terrifying, because you have around you this capricious, vivacious and ceaseless activity going on around you, and it rather feels like you're in a park watching a merry-go-round spin around in front of you very quickly, and you want to try and jump onto that merry-go-round, but it's very hard and you are often thrown off. So life in a city can be quite unsettling, because you want to keep up with the energetic masses around you, but also you want to have the time to think of where you are and to reflect and to enjoy being still. But it's very hard in the city because there's so much activity going on around you that you feel compelled to replicate. And it was while I was having my time here that I read this book, which is called A Man in Full by Tom Wolfe. And Mr. Wolfe is most famous for his other novel, The Bonfire of the Vanities, which some of you may have heard of. And it was earlier this year in May that he passed away at the age of 88. And this novel is like The Bonfire of the Vanities, a very, as you can see, very fat panorama of life in a city and of all the various trials and difficulties and tediums of trying to navigate in large urban space and to find and to operate within a community. And there's a particular scene in here that takes place inside a large symphony hall. And the character we're following in this particular chapter is looking up at the performance of Beethoven's Sixth Symphony, and her eyes attract particularly towards one violinist who is a very elderly man, and it's described how he looks and how he's so sadly playing the violin. And she constructs for him a narrative of that, oh, well, he must be a widow and his wife might have died 13 years ago, so now he finds solace in his music. And it was this particular passage that really struck me as being quite relatable to how I feel at this point in time being in a new urban environment, because it describes the phenomenon that I've christened the crisis of the city, whereby you are in a localized environment, a small, very enclosed environment of over 1 million people, and yet there is at times this quite staggering feeling of solitude and loneliness. And I thought this was quite beautifully captured in this particular passage here. So the character is thinking about the violinist, and it says here, the thought brought a mist to Martha's eyes. 2,000 or 3,000 people in this one hall, and so much loneliness. And who besides herself paused long enough to pity the lonely? No one that she knew of. They all saw loneliness as a stigma, as a sign of failure, as a gaffe. It was a violation of etiquette. Loneliness was. It was a source of embarrassment. So that isn't to say that I personally feel that loneliness is a source of embarrassment, but it does carry at times this quiet stigma, because in a city where there's this celebration of activity and unity and of relationships being at times quite publicly presented, for instance, those public displays of affection you see with couples, you think, wow, isn't that nice? Yeah, good for you. Cool. So it can be quite difficult at times having to remind yourself that loneliness and solitude can be of value because it gives you time to reflect. But it's, I think, being in a city where there's so much energy and activity going on that it is difficult to remind yourself that being on your own is a good thing. So, for instance, yesterday in preparation for this speech, I didn't go to work. I took a day off, and because I wanted to clear my head, and it really helped because I rode my bike along here and I went way, way, way down there, further into the end of the city by the river, and I just deliberately got lost. And there were lots of streets like this that are very small and very quiet, and removed from that loud, mad rush of activity in this city centre, coming further away and stepping away from the merry-go-round, you were then able to watch it spin, and you're able to think about how it moves and operates. And you can then reappraise how you are going to incorporate yourself into that environment. So it was by removing myself here and by appreciating my solitude that I was able to reflect on where I am now. And where I am now is at a point where I'm able to reflect on this dream of mine, my dream of living in Germany. And I think it is still a dream I wish to pursue, but I'm very grateful for the opportunity having come here, having seen and realized what it is like moving to a large place, essentially unaided by oneself, because I'm now able to appreciate more than I had in the past, because every time I attend an event or whenever I go and visit a new city, it's always with the mindset of, oh, I'm only here for a short time, wicked, nice. So everything becomes rose-tinted, and I am able to neglect those temporary feelings of loneliness because I know that when I return to my hostel or when I go back to the room I'm staying with my friend, I will have that familiar, I will have that comfort blanket. Whereas here, when I have my own devices, I can now appreciate the difficulty of moving to a new place. And so it's with this perspective that I can realize that, yes, when I graduate university, I may return to Germany. I would like that. And I know now, and I am strengthened by the knowledge that being in a new urban space by oneself is not an easy process. And I didn't know this before I came here in June. I just had this wonderful rose-tinted vision of life in Germany, just sitting in bars, reading books, riding in parks, swimming in lakes, and all these things I have achieved, yes, and they've been wonderful, but it has also been grounded by the reality of the hardship and struggle of being in a new place by yourself. So at the end of that rather rambling anecdote, I would like all of you to think of what community means to you. What do you define as a community? Is it events like this where you are literally surrounded by other people who are like-minded? Or do you find community at home with your family? Do you find community at the park where you just sit on your own and you're able to observe the other residents around you? What does community mean to you? And it might well say in the definition that community is defined by people having a particular characteristic in common. But the question is, what is that characteristic? What is it that makes you gravitate towards a particular group of people or a particular individual? And so in closing, I want all of you to think of where you are. I want all of you to think of how far you've come, if you've moved away from home deliberately, if this is your home, or if you have intention to expand elsewhere, and to think of your sense of place in the world, and to think of what that sense of place means to you. What associations do you have with your hometown? What associations do you have with this new unfounded territory? Why do you want to expand and why do you want to explore? These are the questions I want you to keep in mind because they are the questions I've had to answer myself by being here in Cologne, by being in this new unfamiliar territory. It's been a place where I've had an extraordinary fluctuation of highs and lows, of really positive points that I've really savored and enjoyed, but moments that have been grounded and often overshadowed by negative points of loneliness or frustration or vexation or tedium or exhaustion of trying so hard to keep up with the mad rush of city life. But I know that if there was that stable, flat-lined, grounded foundation, I would get bored. If there wasn't this friction and irritation, I would get bored. So it's very difficult to find the balance between activity and inertia. And so that is essentially all I want to put in your head. I want you all to think about where you are and what it means to you. And so in closing, I say, Dankeschön.
Thank you so much, and it was a really, really good speech. So it was perfect to choose you because it was a last-minute decision, and I personally can say it's also, a little bit my journey because I just moved from Hong Kong back to Cologne after 2.5 years, so I know the feeling, how it feels to be, to live abroad, to be lost in an urban jungle, and I can tell you Hong Kong is a little bit bigger than Cologne and a little bit faster and a little bit, and I told him because we had a really nice chat on Facebook thanks to the social media somehow, and I pushed him a little bit to talk about his experience because I was not allowed, so thank you. But no, it's of course his experience, but I told him you're just here for 3 months, and I think everything is so new, so exciting. I think it's after 2.5 years in Hong Kong, I can say I settled down, I met my community, my friends, and I left Hong Kong with tears. But I think 3 months is really difficult to connect with people because friendships are not grown in 3 months, so it takes time. And I love the idea of networking, otherwise I wouldn't be host of Creative Mornings. But that's a little bit my thanks to you guys because I got a lot of friends after 2.5 years Creative Mornings, and it's so nice to see familiar faces every month, and that's a little bit what pushed me, and I'm super grateful that you talked about your experience, and I'm happy that some journeys are quite similar, and yeah, so, and I guess you have questions. Yeah.
Do you find yourself, have you found yourself constructing your life a little bit differently than what you're used to? Because from my experience, because I moved to a couple of places or spent more than 1 to 3 months in several places, and yes, there's difficulty, but for me there's also the beauty of being able to say, okay, now I get a chance to create life, anew for me, and maybe do things differently.
This sounds kind of like regressive, but it's made me appreciate university more, because at university, like, it is a bubble, and like, the thing is, like, I feel as though at university people have time to give a shit about you. The difficulty I faced in city life is because everyone has their own pre-established social circles and their own careers and families and other responsibilities. Trying to incorporate yourself into that pre-established social circle is really difficult. Whereas at university, it's a comfort blanket, which isn't especially helpful because you don't often get that in the real world. But it's going to be nice to like have that support foundation, have that community of lecturers and other students and friends. So it doesn't really answer your question, but the way I kind of live here is trying to. I've been writing a lot, which is good, because all of the observations and experiences I have here, I will be able to reflect on later. Because at the moment, I'm right on the edge of the merry-go-round, so I can't see it properly. So when I go home, when I step away from the merry-go-round, I can then watch it spin, and I can appreciate how it's spinning and how it moves, and then I can appraise what I did to try and jump on the merry-go-round. At the moment, I'm still trying really hard to jump on, so I can't really reflect on how I'm doing it at the moment, because I'm still too close to see what's in front of me. I have no focus at the moment.
Yeah.
Which again doesn't answer your question, sorry.
More questions? Nothing? No, I think it's good that you said that being at university is more like a bubble. I don't know if you heard about the it's not anymore the midlife crisis, it's not more the quarter crisis that people. What?
Crisis all the time.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a new phenomenon that people are getting lost in their mid-20s because they're coming from school and people teach us for years you can reach everything, you can do everything, you can be the first chancellor, you can be the first female. When I was a kid, my dream was to be the first female chancellor in Germany. I failed because Angela Merkel made it. Even when I failed, people told me, but you can be bigger then. So I think our generation got taught that we can talk. That we can reach everything. So, and then there's the real life. We are moving abroad, we are living abroad, and we realize maybe we can't reach everything, and everybody has to find his personal, reason why we are on Earth. What's our journey, our goals, and I think that's a really interesting topic. But I'm super happy that you talked about it from a 21 years perspective. No questions? Then enjoy the morning. Thank you to